I wanted to chat about old souls or soul ages in general. Why? What I know about soul ages really helps me to cope. And I think that maybe some of you will find this helpful, especially right now. This has been helping me for the last few years. Things have gotten a little crazy with people sort of dividing off into camps and being really unable to relate to each other, even within families, or friendships shift and things like that. And this helps. And it's also relevant because we teach about soul ages and the soul's journey in the Holistic Reproductive Practitioner program. We spend time, especially in term 2, second half of the first year, learning about soul ages as we get into the energetic aspects of the training, the spiritual pieces, because it helps with space holding. And Holistic Reproductive Practitioner is a big part of our work, is to hold space. And it's much easier to hold space for all different people who are at different stages of the soul's journey when you can see an individual as a soul on a soul's journey and understand that while we may not be able to always relate to each other, that a person's place, their perspective, it makes sense to them. And so, as a disclaimer, I do want to start off by saying I do not claim to be an old soul. I do feel older in my soul's journey, but I still have a little too much passion, and I get a little too caught up in the illusion to really consider myself like a sitting in the rocking chair reflecting on life old soul. I would say I'm maybe like a nearing retirement age soul is how I feel. The other thing I want to say is take what you connect with and leave the rest. This is my truth, and I never proclaim to tell people how they should view the world or view life. This is a perspective. If you were talking about soul ages and old souls, then that means we're talking about reincarnation. And so if that doesn't resonate with you, that's okay. But you can't be an old soul without reincarnating, because it implies basically that it's a soul that's been around the block a few extra times. We talk about old souls when we see wise children, for example, or we recognize wisdom in younger people that seems beyond their years. And what we're saying is they must have brought that wisdom with them from, a very vast and broad past life experiences. So why now? During this pandemic is another time where we see division in what people believe, and it can be very triggering for most people when we're confronted with beliefs that vary vastly from the perspective that we see. And sometimes it can seem downright crazy to hear what people really believe on any side of the spectrum. And when we can hold space for people that the illusion that they buy into matches their soul's experience and their soul's age, and it makes sense for their stage of soul development, then we can relax a little bit. And I'm not saying that a certain soul age buys into an illusion. I'm saying that all of us do. Wherever we are in the soul age spectrum, no two people are sharing the exact same reality of what is happening. I can't think of one other person who shares the exact same worldview and belief about what is going on right now as I do. So that means that every single one of us is living in our own version of the reality. Which one is right? Which one is true? None of them. They're all an illusion. And my soul can recognize that, but that doesn't mean that I don't get caught up in my ego self sometimes, my very human self, and get very caught up in my version of the illusion. And that's when I can get most easily triggered by other people's version of the illusion that shares almost nothing in common with my own. So I also want to clarify that I don't believe it's better to be any soul age than another soul age. That would be like saying it's better to be an elder person, an 85-year-old person, than it is to be a 5-year-old, or it's better to be 40 than 20. None of that is true. There are benefits to being all of the ages. And imagine a society where, if the globe was just 85-year-olds, it wouldn't work. And if the globe was populated with only 5-year-olds, it wouldn't work. We need 5-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 45-year-olds, and 85-year-olds to have this experience. And we need to have this experience together. And even though an 85-year-old will often look at a 20-year-old and not be able to relate to why they wear their clothes like that, or why they wear their hair like that, or why they speak like that, or why they believe the way they believe, that doesn't mean that the young person's experience isn't valid and a necessary part of their journey. And so soul ages and soul stages are the same. We were all young souls, and we will all be old souls, but not at the same time. I'm going to bring it back now to present moment, living during the global pandemic, and what I perceive and how this applies. So myself, my ego self, my very human self, can see in myself and in others the triggering that happens when we're exposed to those very different belief systems. We get frustrated. How can they believe that? And so on one end of the spectrum, you will have people that take what they're told very literally, and it is the truth. And I'm not just talking about mainstream media. Some people do that with mainstream media. So what they see on the news is what's happening. It is fact. But in that same camp, you will have people that will buy into conspiracy propaganda and take it very literally and see it as fact. The youngest souls among us don't question authority, whatever their authority is. So I think in previous generations, authority would have always been respected as, it could have been your priest or minister, it could have been your parents, it could have been the law. And now we have so much more access to information and perspectives that it can be those things. It can be, what you see on CNN, or what your community politicians or your national politicians or provincial or state politicians tell you, that you take very literally, and they're your authority figure. But it can also be conspiracy theorists who talk about this is what's really happening, and all of that is fake, and this is what's true. And so if you take that literally without questioning, you're doing the same thing, which is also okay. That might be hard for some people to hear. Youngest souls who very much have a place in society, and we need them, and they're on their journey, and we are all them, take things literally without questioning, whoever their camp leader is. And it really depends on who you're surrounded by as well. So we tend to really congregate with similar soul ages because we can relate to them. So, and that doesn't mean like everybody that you hang around with is the same soul age, but they tend to be not so far off, right? And so then the oldest souls, they're actually not getting caught up in anything because they know it's all an illusion, and they've been literally through the war. They've had all kinds of experiences. It's like shit happens, and I've been through this before, so they just don't get as caught up. And then somewhere in between, in that soul age journey, we're older, but not old, and so we can still get caught up in it, but we don't take anything literally. And so it's a spectrum of beliefs and experiences. So this is what helps me when my ego self, my human self, gets really triggered by how can they believe that, and it gets scary and fear-based, because I want everybody to believe what is true. And then on my soul self, when I'm not so caught up in my ego self, can see everyone, it's like stepping back and just being the observer and noticing that we're all caught up in our own illusion, and it's all an illusion. And I don't attach to any one reality being true, because it's all true and none of it's true. And that's your deep thought for today. Maybe we'll end it there. I hope this helps you. It really helps me to be able to hold space for people to just like have the belief and the experience that they're having right now. And if you do feel like you're an older soul, we should just be a guiding light for younger souls as well. And I don't mean that sounds really egotistical, and I don't mean it that way, but it's easier, the older the soul you are, the easier it is to step back and be that observer and not get caught up in the ego piece. Because when we react with ego, it engages someone else's ego. So if I can step back and be the observer and hold space for people exactly as they are, then their defenses come down as well, because their ego doesn't have anything to interact with. And so everybody is capable of doing that, but it is a little easier for the older souls who have more experience maybe doing that over many, many lifetimes. And so I think that would help to reduce your own suffering and create a little less division for all of us. And my dog is wanting to go down to the river, so she's barking for me to go with her. So I'm going to do that now. I hope that you're staying well, body, mind, and soul/spirit.